Good evening and thank you for joining us for tonight's Congressional District 1 Forum. I'm Chris Frescus, CEO and publisher of the weekly issue El Semanario, and appreciate everyone being here this evening for what promises to be an important and informative discussion. Our goal tonight is to create a respectful, issue-focused conversation that gives voters a clear understanding of where each candidate stands and how they plan to serve the people of CD1. Joining me here tonight is Beth Hendricks, Executive Director of Colorado, the League of Women Voters. Beth, thank you for your leadership, for helping make tonight's forum possible, and for having us as your media partner this evening.
Thank you, Chris. It's always a pleasure and an honor to partner with El Seminario. For 106 years now, the League of Women Voters has been empowering voters and defending democracy, and we can't do that well unless we're reaching into all corners of our communities, and that includes our Spanish-speaking voters. So we're really proud of this partnership. So thank you for your partnership.
Well, thank you so much, Beth. And you said it right there about democracy. It is so important that we all participate in this year's elections. We have a lot that involves all our communities. Tonight you'll hear the topics on various levels, dealing with the economics of Colorado and also some federal issues. Also, we'll talk about immigration, ICE, education, a wide variety of topics. So again, thank you for being here tonight. And remember, this year, vote. This year's
and the League of Women Voters of Denver. El Seminario is our media partner, and I am Micah Smith, an anchor with Denver 7. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and thank you to those who are tuning in via the web. Tonight's goal is simple. Give voters the information they need to make informed decisions in the 2026 state primary election on Tuesday, June 30th. Among the races on the ballot are the candidates vying to represent Congressional District 1, covering the city and county of Denver and nearby enclaves of Glendale and Holly Hills. Tonight's format includes opening and closing statements, in-depth policy questions, and shorter lightning round questions where candidates will raise paddles to respond. All candidates receive identical questions and equal time. Our questions were drafted and reviewed by our volunteers and partners, with a special thanks to Dr. Jason Jordan of Metropolitan State University of Denver and Dr. Dakota Park Ozzie of the University of Denver for their review to ensure balance and fairness. A few ground rules.
Good evening and thank you for joining us for tonight's Congressional District 1 Forum. I'm Chris Frescus, CEO and publisher.
Please silence your phones at this time. Hold applause until directed and refrain from recording or disrupting the event. Disruptive behavior may result in removal. Now let's meet the candidates. They are seated right next to me, and that is left to right facing the audience in the order they will appear on the June 30th ballot. So again, please hold your applause until all have been introduced. So we begin with Melat Quiros. Next to her is Representative Diana DeGette, and furthest from me is Wanda James. They are all from the Democratic Party, Republican Christy Peterson, who will also be on the ballot, was invited to participate but declined to attend. Let's welcome all the candidates to our forum. We begin tonight's forum with opening remarks from each candidate. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves, share their priorities, and explain why they are seeking to represent Congressional District 1. Timekeepers are located here in the front of the audience in sight of the candidates, so let's keep an eye on them. We will begin in ballot order with Maylat Quiros. You may speak first.
Hi everyone, my name is Maylat Quiros. I am a recovering lawyer. I am a PhD student in public affairs. As of a couple of weeks ago, I was a tipped minimum wage worker as a barista at Whittier Cafe, and I'm running to represent this incredible district in the United States House of Representatives. Because for so long, my generation has been watching as those in power have failed to meaningfully represent our interests, meaningfully work for working people, and actually address the root cause of all of the corruption that has completely eroded what is left of our democracy. I am a recovering lawyer because just a couple of years ago, I wrote an article that defended the students that were protesting what was rapidly developing into a genocide in Palestine. I defended their right to protest, and I spoke specifically to our responsibility to defend the right to free speech and the right to protest. My firm disagreed with the letter I wrote. I was asked to take it down. I said no, and I was quickly fired. And within a week, I moved back home to Colorado. This is where I grew up. I immigrated here in '98 when I was just a baby. And I had never spent more than like 3-4 months away from Denver at a time because this is where my community is. And I was really excited at the opportunity to come back. And instead of going back to the law, I decided that there was a lot more work to be done because I had gotten messages from hundreds of lawyers who'd said, I wish I could have spoken out too, but I just found out I'm pregnant. I can't afford to lose that child care. One person said their husband had just lost his job and she was providing the only health care for the entire family and she couldn't risk losing that. And I realized very quickly that our jobs that are providing us with our livelihood are being lorded over our heads and preventing us from holding our government accountable and holding truth to power. And so I decided that the real work had to be in making sure that our basic needs are protected no matter what. We are in this moment right now where fascism and authoritarianism is destroying our democracy because we have prevented people from meaningfully participating in our democracy. You cannot participate in democracy when you're worried about being able to make rent next month, when you're worried about the tens of thousands of dollars in medical debt that you've accrued, or the hundreds of thousands of dollars you've accrued in student loan debt, like myself. And so this is about addressing the root cause. I'm tired of Band-Aids. I'm tired of incremental change. We need bold and rapid solutions to address the strain on working families. That is how we fight back against Trump, and that is how we fight back against the authoritarianism that is destroying what's little left of our democracy. Thank you.
And now the opening statement from Representative Diana DeGette.
Thank you so much, Micah, for being our moderator today. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters and El Seminario. I want to thank Montview Presbyterian Church, my home church. And I saw some of my fellow choir members here tonight. So I want to tell you, I'm on leave, but I will be back after we win the election in November and restore order for the Democrats. And I'll tell you why. Democracy is on the line. No doubt about it. Donald Trump and his minions in Congress are seeking to destroy our democracy for their own good. Job number one, now and into this next Congress when the Democrats will take the majority, is standing up to Donald Trump, stopping his illegal activities, which I will talk about tonight, and restoring our democracy. I have some experience standing up to Donald Trump. In his first term, I presided over his first impeachment trial as Speaker Pro Tem, and I was an impeachment manager for his impeachment trial, where I was able to actually convince some Republicans in the Senate, like Bill Cassidy, to vote for impeachment. Now, We have to keep standing up against his illegal war in Iran. We have to keep standing up against his continual assaults on Congress and our Article 1 authority. I'm a member of the litigation task force that we have started in the House, and we are filing amicus briefs every week, including one just last week against his illegal slush fund. And we are working and we are winning 80% of those. I'm fighting against the cuts to HHS as the senior Democrat on the Health Subcommittee, soon to be the chair of that subcommittee. I am fighting to make sure that RFK Jr. and his anti-science policies never go into effect. They're dangerous for our health and for our children's health. Now, there's a lot more work that we're going to need to do once we win the majority and I get the gavel as the chair of the Health Subcommittee. We're going to have to pass universal health care, Medicare for all. We're going to have to abolish ICE. And as co-chair of the Reproductive Freedom Caucus in Congress, we're going to have to pass a bill in the first week through the House that will restore abortion rights to every woman in this country, just like we have here in Colorado. That's why we need a fighter in Congress. That's why I'm running for re-election. And that's why I'm asking you for your support tonight. Thank you.
And now the opening statement from Wanda Jones.
Good evening, and thank you, League of Women Voters, for being here and doing this tonight, and thank all of you for being here tonight. My name is Wanda James, and I am running for Congress because service has been the hallmark of my life. I have served this country in uniform. I have served the students at the University of Colorado as your regent here in Congressional District 1. I have served communities that have been too often left behind and the doors have been closed. I have also served your family at my husband's restaurant, two of them in Picture. We have been there for your celebrations, your anniversaries, your times with your family over great food and rum drinks. As a student and a first-gen student at the University of Colorado Boulder, I became the first Black woman commissioned to the ROTC program at the university. This was another first. What I am proud of is since I have graduated, hundreds of women have come through that program, earning their commission and earning jobs. In corporate America, I was often the only woman, the only Black person sitting around the table in Fortune 100 companies. I know what that feels like. I have learned very early that being invited into the room is not enough. You must use your voice, you must use your courage, and you must speak out. I left corporate America when I met this amazing man down here, and we decided to open up our first restaurant in Santa Monica, California. Since that time, in the years since, my husband and I have built businesses, created great jobs, and have opened the door for so many young people, including Boulder City Councilwoman Taisha Adams, who had her very first job out of college at our restaurant in Santa Monica. That's what leadership means to me. You simply do not walk through a door. You make sure that it stays open for everybody else to come with you. I have spent decades fighting for Democrats and fighting for democracy. I helped Barack Obama on his National Finance Committee get elected, the first Black president. I helped Kamala Harris become the first vice president, the first woman vice president. We had an amazing fundraiser for her at our house with electing women, and we raised over $172,000. My Warrior PAC, which I have raised money for Democrats, for almost every Democrat in Colorado, including the ones next to me, we were able to unseat what was going on in Aurora with MAGA extremism. My husband and I became the first Black people in America to own a dispensary because we didn't want to see Black people and Latinos continually part of the mass incarceration and slave labor. We fought to change that, and I could not be more proud. When I show up, things change. I have stood for what's right even when it's not popular, and I am looking forward to being your next member of Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the candidates for your opening remarks. And we will now move into the question portion of tonight's forum, where each candidate will be asked the same questions and given equal time to respond. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. So here is your first question. What are or will be your top 3 priorities as a congressperson for Congressional District 1? And what specific actions will you take to advance them? We will start in reverse order from the opening remarks statements, and we begin with an answer from Wanda James.
Thank you. My top 3 priorities for Colorado's 1st Congressional District are to make Denver affordable for people who live and work here, protect every family's right to live and to learn without fear, and secure a healthy and just future for every Denver neighborhood. First, we must address the cost of living in Denver. That includes housing, health care, child care, elder care, and the ability for families to be able to care for families without losing your paycheck. Denver cannot become a city where teachers, restaurant workers, and first responders cannot afford to live in the communities where they work. I will fight for affordable and quality child care, stronger support for families, for caring for aging parents and for loved ones, and we must pass Medicare for all. If every country, advanced country in the world can do this, America can absolutely do it. I will also fight to support our public schools. Being a regent at the University of Colorado, public education is massively important to me. K through 12 and all the way through 16 should be fully funded, and we should have the most perfect education that we can possibly imagine. Nobody who wants to go to college should be denied a college education because their families can't afford it. Third, environmental justice. Too many of our inner city neighborhoods are overheated. They don't have any open space, and the homes and the air quality around those homes are not good for children and for elderly people. We must ensure that we are fighting to make sure we have clean energy, clean air, and that our infrastructure is put into a place so that inner cities and the folks in inner cities and healthcare in inner cities is something that we can be very proud of.
Now, Representative Diana DeGette, your response.
Well, I'm going to give my answer.
Okay.
Thank you. So I suspect that you'll hear similar priorities from all 3 of us tonight, but I'm also going to tell you exactly how I intend to advance those issues as a member of Congress. Number 1, we have to have affordable health care for all Americans. That means Medicare for all and reducing prescription drug prices. I mentioned in my opening, I'm the ranking Democrat on the Health Subcommittee, and in the next Congress, when we win the majority, I'll be the chair. What I will do, I'm already working with members of my subcommittee, including people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, to put together the legislation that we can pass as a Congress and get the votes to do it. Secondly, affordability. Wanda's exactly right. Affordability is an issue in Denver. We need child care for all. That's why I'm co-sponsoring the bill for child care for all. We need cheaper housing, which is why I'm co-sponsoring legislation that will take the ICE money when we abolish ICE and divert that to housing for all Americans. And we need to stop the GOP cuts to Medicaid from their one big bad bill. And we need to restore the premium tax credits so everybody can get affordable health care. Finally, we need to protect Colorado's environment. I have legislation that is bipartisan legislation for environmental justice to clean up neighborhoods like Elyria, Swansea, and when the Democrats have the majority, because I'm a senior member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, we'll be able to pass it. And finally, we must preserve our pristine air, water, and public lands and stop them from drilling. I have a bill, the Colorado Wilderness Act, that I'm hoping will pass, and we will preserve millions of acres. Thank you.
Maylot Quiros, your answer to question 1.
I agree with the Congresswoman that I think most of us share a lot of these values here at this table. What we do not share is an understanding of what actually needs to be done to get those priorities over the line. These have been policies and part of the platform of the Democratic Party for years, in some cases decades. And yet we have failed to see meaningful reform or progress on any of these issues. In fact, the last time the Democratic Party actually delivered for working people was with Obamacare. And while that was a monumental achievement, tens of millions of Americans got health care that didn't have it before, it was still a Band-Aid that we are fighting for the subsidies right now to this day. And the thing that is holding back all of our priorities and our policies is the issue of money in politics. I am the only candidate in this race who has promised to never take a dime in corporate PAC money. Because the fact of the matter is, we are not living under threat of oligarchy, we are living under oligarchy, and we have been for at least the last decade. If you are a corporation or a special interest group, there's a 70% chance that you can get whatever bill you want through Congress. If you're an ordinary citizen, even if you have the support of the vast majority of Americans, for example, 72% of Americans want universal child care, there's only a 30% chance that your bill is going to get through. Because ordinary people, ordinary voters do not have the power and influence that these special interests and these corporations have. And that is why I have promised to never take a dime in this corporate PAC money, because I'm not running to represent moneyed interests. I'm running to represent the people of this district. If we are serious about getting universal health care, if we are serious about getting affordable housing and universal child care and elder care, we have to address the root cause. And any candidate who fails to talk about that issue meaningfully either does not understand the issue or is in bed with those special interests. Either way, it's disqualifying.
We will move forward now to question 2. The Save America Act would require documentary proof of citizenship, such as a passport or birth certificate, when registering to vote in federal elections. The Brennan Center estimates that approximately 21 million eligible U.S. citizens do not readily have such documents on hand. What is your position on the SAVE Act, and how would you address concerns about both voting access and election integrity? Let's begin with Diana DeGette.
Well, election integrity is the foundation of the preservation of our democracy, and it is at risk. I oppose the SAVE Act for the reasons the Brennan Center said, and I voted against the SAVE Act when it came through the House. It's now stuck in the Senate, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure it does not pass. They're correct. If you are a married woman and you took your husband's name, in order to vote, anybody here, in order to vote, you would have to take your passport or your birth certificate to the polling place. I don't know how many of you carry those around. I sure don't. And it's dangerous and it's destructive. And when you add the SAVE Act to the terrifying Supreme Court decision recently on the Voting Rights Act, you can see what the Republicans are trying to do. We're fighting back against it. We're fighting to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which I'm an original co-sponsor of, which bans discrimination at the ballot box. And also, I'm a Freedom to Vote Act co-sponsor. That bans dark money. It has automatic and same-day registration. It lets 3.8 million more Americans cast a ballot. And I want to say, I have an A rating from End Citizens United because I believe we need to take the dark money out of politics. I look forward to working on these issues now and in the fall, and it's going to be a top priority of the Democrats to pass this. In the meantime, everybody here needs to make sure everybody you know goes out and votes, not just on June 30th, but in November, so that we can preserve our democracy for the American people. Thank you.
Melat Kiros, your answer to the question.
Of course, I am opposed to the SAVE Act for the very same reasons that the Congresswoman explained, and I am grateful for her voting against that bill when it came through in the House. The fact of the matter is the attack on our democracy and the attack on voting rights is a part of a longer project that Republicans have been engaging in for at least the last 6 decades. And it first began with an attack on our courts. I was literally in school watching professors of mine that belong to the Federalist Society, identifying classmates that were going to be put on the judgeship track so that they could engage in the same ideological work that we have seen take over our courts all the way up to the Supreme Court. They also have engaged in bribery and corruption among all of our federal agencies, and including in our Congress, where we are seeing so many members of Congress either engaging in stock trading, either engaging in going out to lobby after they leave office. All of these things are part of the same issue. They have attacked all of our levers of power to hold government accountable, and the attack on our voting rights is a part of that. And the reason why they're so successful is because voters don't trust us anymore. They don't trust Democrats. We lost the last election because they do not believe any longer that Democrats are actually working to fight for working people. And in order for us to build that trust back, we actually have to deliver something, right? We have to deliver a tangible result for working people again. So of course, I am against the SAVE Act. I am against any form of attack on our voting rights. But to understand where that attack is coming from, I think is paramount. And to address what kind of solutions will aid in dissuading people from believing Republicans in the first place when they say that things like the SAVE Act are actually protecting our democracy. Of course it's not. It's restricting it. And we have to be serious about what we are going to do to address that.
Wanda James, it is your turn to answer the question.
Thank you. Of course, I'm against the SAVE Act, but this goes much deeper. The attack on the Voting Rights Act happened in states throughout the South in which you have more than 30, 40, and 50% black population. Once you get past Mississippi, I don't believe that there are any states that have more than 10% black population. Ladies, let me speak to you for a second, because once they take away the black voice, it will be our voice that they come for next. It will be Latinos, it will be LGBT, and this is just a rite of passage to make sure that it works. The attack on the Voting Rights Act happened because of what's happening with our Supreme Court. Weeks ago, I called for court reform. Since then, I have seen Vice President Kamala Harris, numerous very serious journalists come out and talk about court reform. I am in favor, and I would call for immediately in Congress an expansion of the court. I would like to see every president have one SCOTUS pick. And most importantly, and hear me say this, nobody should be in office for 30, 40, or 50 years. Nobody, including our Supreme Court. There should be term limits on the Supreme Court of maybe 18 years. There should be term limits on Congress. There should be term limits on the Senate, because we cannot have people that are making laws for generations when they become out of touch with those generations, and when we have a time like now, which is endangering the voice of every black person, every woman, every Latino, and every LGBT person in this country. This is a battle of our lifetime, and we need to send people to Congress who are prepared for the battle, who have shown leadership, and have spent their lives serving Americans, and will know what to do when we get there. Quiet leadership is no longer effective.
Thank you to all of our candidates for your answers. We will now move to question 3. According to the Congressional Budget Office, federal debt held by the public is projected to reach 120% of GDP by 2036, higher than at any point in U.S. history, surpassing the previous record of 106% set just after World War II. What specific fiscal and economic policies would you support to reduce deficits, strengthen growth, and protect working communities in CD1? Maylot Quiros, we'll start with you.
So I'm 29 years old. I immigrated here in '98 when I was a baby, and I watched my parents work for years, 2 to 3 jobs at a time, in order to be able to build what I believe they achieved in the American dream. And they were able to do that by just working hard. That is no longer the case, because for decades, the federal government has been engaging in tax cuts, has been engaging in corporate welfare, and has been ignoring the plight of working people that are just trying to get by. The 2017 tax cuts by the Trump administration alone added $2 trillion to the federal deficit. We have been seeing the deficit ballooning for decades now, largely under Republican administrations, but Democratic administrations haven't done anything to rein back those tax cuts once they get back into power. The fact of the matter is, we have to tax the rich. For too long, our tax code has been manipulated and distorted to advance the wealth accumulation and exploitation of the ultra-rich, while working people are seeing less and less and less buying power every single year. This is unsustainable. Our economy will collapse under the weight of this wealth inequality. And so our responsibility is to make sure that everyone is paying their fair share in their taxes, and including making sure that we are funding the IRS sufficiently. A vote that I am disappointed that the Congresswoman engaged in where there were tax cuts for the IRS. The only reason the IRS cannot actually hold the wealthy accountable is because they do not have the resources to go up the army of lawyers and staffers that these ultra-rich and corporations have. In fact, the IRS has estimated that we are missing $700 billion in tax revenue because of their evasion of their taxes. And that doesn't even include the legal way many people have been engaging in tax evasion as well.
Wanda James, your answer to the question.
Thank you. So we have to start investing in the root cause of why our economy is not working for us. We have to be able to work on our infrastructure. We have to create new green energy jobs. And most importantly, and I'm going to keep coming back to this time and time and time again, we have to invest in education. We've got to be able to show small businesses and small business owners that they too can survive in America, that we are a small business friendly country. What do I mean when I say small businesses? It means the reason why our neighborhoods are strong. It means that when we have small businesses, that's what creates community. In creating community, then we are able to do things that support the working class families. And that comes from the very basics of ensuring that we have child care, ensuring that there is elder care, ensuring that people are able to take time off with Medicare for all and not have to lose money or go bankrupt because you have a heart attack or a broken leg. These are very basic things that we need to do here in America that, once again, the rest of the evolved world has been doing it, and for some reason we cannot seem to get there. One of the biggest reasons that we can't get there is because of our tax code. We have to end the tax loopholes. It is true that the wealthy spend almost 97% of our tax money. However, the issue becomes the loopholes that are attached to that, and more importantly, corporate taxes are not in par with where they should be. And this is the most important thing that needs to have happen. I would also want to end subsidies to any corporation, billion-dollar corporation that's making billions in profits and then getting subsidies from the federal government. Make it make sense. It makes no sense. Those companies should be giving more to make sure that the bottom line works and that working people don't carry the entire burden for ensuring that our infrastructure is good, that we have access to child care, access to Medicare for all, access to elder care. And what's important about Medicare for all, it allows small businesses to compete then with the larger corporations. It's an important aspect that we need to do.
Thank you. Diana DeGette, your answer?
Thank you. Folks, budgets are a reflection of our nation's values. And under Donald Trump and his Republican cult in Congress, we have the largest discrepancy between the richest Americans and the poorest Americans in our nation's history. That has to end. And here's how it can end. Number one, the Republicans' H.R. 1 earlier this year, I call it the one big bad bill. It raised deficits to fund tax cuts for the ultra-wealthy and corporations to the tune of increasing our deficits by $3.4 trillion while cutting benefits for working families. It cut SNAP benefits. It cut Medicaid benefits for 15 million Americans. It cut student loan forgiveness programs, all of those things. The first thing I believe we need to do is we need to reverse all of those cuts, and we need to restore the SNAP benefits, the Medicaid benefits, and the student loan benefits. Secondly, Iran, the illegal Iran war is costing $1 billion per day. And I call for an immediate end to that war and for all of that money to be spent on programs that will help working families in America. Now, every week, the Democrats are bringing up a War Powers resolution. 2 weeks ago, it failed on a tie vote, and it almost passed last week. And next week, when I go back to Washington, we're going to win that. And the last thing I'll say is, when Donald Trump and the Republicans come to me and ask me for the defense budget to fund this illegal war, I have 2 words: hell no. I'm voting no.
We will now pause from our main questions for a brief lightning round. These questions are designed to give voters a quick, clear sense of where each candidate stands on a range of issues. For each question, candidates will respond by raising their paddle to indicate whether they support or oppose the issue. Support, oppose, or pass are the only options. Are we ready? All right, here we go. Do you support or oppose codifying abortion rights into federal law? Do you support or oppose federal protections for access to contraception? Do you support or oppose increasing federal funding for maternal health care services? Do you support or oppose raising the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour? Do you support or oppose expanding tax credits for middle and low income households? Do you support or oppose the proposed graduated income tax in Colorado, initiative number 195? Do you support or oppose expanding Medicare eligibility? Do you support or oppose the federal government negotiating prescription drug prices? Do you support or oppose creating a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants currently living in the United States? Do you support or oppose a pledge to focus campaign messaging on issues and policy differences rather than negative personal attacks or misleading ads? All right, thank you, candidates. We will now return to our main questions, again, where each candidate has 2 minutes to respond. Question 4, and this is about immigration. What are your priorities regarding immigration and border enforcement? Which current border or immigration policies do you support or believe require change? We will start with Wanda James.
As a regent, as the University of Colorado and elected here in CD1, I support a pathway to citizenship. I support the ending and abolishing of ICE, and let me tell you why that matters. We talked a little bit earlier about the idea of what just happened with the Voting Rights Act and the attack on Black voices, and I said that they are going to start to come for women, LGBT, the Latino community. This attack on immigrants just furthers that aspect of putting boots on the ground in your cities and making us comfortable with militarized people walking around the cities with guns, masks, and plain clothes. This is something that cannot happen in America. It is against everything that we believe in, against everything that we are. When we do this, and we have seen this at the University of Colorado, people from all over the world become fearful about coming to America to study, to bring their research, to bring their intellect. That is unconscionable for America. We need to have a pathway to citizenship for our dreamers, for our farm workers, and for people who have been in this country since forever and paying taxes and being good citizens. There is nothing wrong with immigration. With the exception of the Black people sitting in this audience, every single one of you come from a family of immigrants. And there is nothing wrong with that happening. I fully support immigrants. I fully support a pathway to immigration, and I fully support making our students and our scholars and our research people feel safe in our universities, and more important than feeling safe, being welcomed on our streets. It's vital that we do this.
Diana DeGette, your answer to the
Thank you.
question.
Well, ICE is just simply a rogue agency and it must be abolished. That's number one. But I didn't just come to this opinion last week or last month. I actually voted against establishing the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11 because I was afraid of what it would turn into, which was a domestic militia that would be harassing our citizens in their homes. And so this has got to stop. The second thing is, though, I've been showing leadership in my committee. The health subcommittee that I talked about before, where I'm the ranking member, we led the investigation when those kids were being held in the cages under the last Trump administration. And we put the light on it and we forced them to reunite those kids with their families. We need to continue to push like that. Number three, we need to oppose the ICE detention centers because we should not have private contractors running prisons. And finally, we need comprehensive immigration reform. We have 11 million people here who are following the law, who are working, they're paying taxes, but they get no benefits because they're not allowed to have them. They should have a path to legal status, and their kids, 2 million of them, who are the dreamers, should be in line to become immediate citizens. They shouldn't have to get in the back of any line because they are what is the fabric of what is making our country strong. Thank you.
Melat Kiros, your answer.
So I'm actually about the same age that my father was when he got selected on the diversity visa lottery program and immigrated here to Denver. And I just think a lot about the courage that it must have taken to move to a brand new country, to not know the language, to be told that your veterinary degree isn't good enough and you're gonna have to start from scratch, and to work multiple jobs at a time in order to be able to make a living for my mom and I, and eventually my little sister. And he did that. He was able to because we had an economy that welcomed immigrants and allowed them the same opportunities to be able to build and invest in the American dream as everyone else. We have to be honest about why we are in this moment right now. Of course, I'm calling to abolish ICE. Of course, I'm calling for comprehensive immigration reform. But this problem has been festering for at least the last 3 decades. And in the last 3 decades, Democrats have held power multiple times and had the opportunity to address this issue and pass that kind of comprehensive reform that we're talking about today. And the only reason Republicans are able to scapegoat immigrants and lay blame on them for all of the problems that working families are experiencing today is because we failed to continue to support working families. If folks weren't struggling to be able to make rent, if folks weren't being crushed under thousands of dollars in medical debt, it would ring hollow to hear Trump and the Republicans blame immigrants for the economy. Our responsibility is to make sure that every single person in this country, immigrants or not, has the same equal opportunity to an economy that is fair, where meritocracy actually prevails. Because at the end of the day, the people who come to this country under the promise that becoming an American just requires you to have this shared belief that we all deserve dignity, that's what makes this country great, and that's what we have to protect.
Thank you. We'll move forward now to question 5, and this one is about the environment. What should Congress prioritize when crafting policy that affects domestic energy production and environmental regulations? And what values would guide your decision-making as a member of Congress? We'll start with Representative Diana DeGette.
Thank you so much. I think all of us here would agree. Every child growing up in Colorado and in this country deserves to breathe clean air and to inherit a world that's free from climate change. And that's why this is an existential problem right now. As a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee and the Energy Subcommittee, I've seen firsthand the Trump administration and the Republican Congress's attempts to roll back the advances we made under Joe Biden in the Inflation Reduction Act and so many other places to move towards a carbon-free energy economy. They say every day, drill, baby, drill, and they mean it. Those policies have got to be reversed. So that will be my first order of business when I get back the majority and on the Energy and Commerce Committee. Secondly, we need to restore and protect the Environmental Protection Agency. Here in Colorado, we see how important that is for our environmental protection. I have a bill, it's called the CETA bill, and it would be the first national bill that would establish a national clean energy standard. I worked on it in the last Congress. I'm very close to having bipartisan support to actually pass it. That'll be my chief energy priority in the next Congress. And finally, we must work to preserve our remaining wild places from oil and gas production and drilling so that we keep them for our children's children. I mentioned my Colorado Wilderness Act in the opening. This would preserve 720,000 acres in Colorado of pristine wilderness for future generations. Thank you.
Melat Kiros, your answer to the question.
I spent my entire childhood watching scientists issue warning after warning after warning about the threat of climate change. And in that same time, I watched those in power do nothing but pass incremental change, take money from the corporations that spent billions of dollars hiding the fact that they were at fault for the climate change in the first place, and then celebrate those incremental changes as if they were worth celebrating. We need rapid, massive, bold reform. I'm not only calling for the Green New Deal, we have to do more than the Green New Deal. In fact, the Green New Deal is 8 years old now. We are talking about a technology, an AI, that is developing so rapidly that it is consuming so much of our energy. And I'm still the only person in this race who has made a concerted effort to address how AI is going to be impacting our climate. I'm the only candidate calling for a national moratorium on data centers to force these AI companies to the table so that they can actually fulfill their promise that this technology is going to help us address the climate change problem. We cannot afford to just take these incremental small improvements. We are running out of time. We've already lost out on the window. We are going to see the worst impacts of climate change, millions of climate refugees and trillions of dollars in damage to infrastructure all across the globe. What are we doing to address that? And how are we preparing for this new future that is just over the horizon? There is not enough urgency being used when we're talking about this issue. This is just as calamitous to the human race as the Cold War was and the threat of a nuclear apocalypse. That is the kind of urgency I'm demanding from our representatives, and that is the kind of urgency I would bring to Congress.
Wanda James, your time to answer the question.
So, once again, as your elected regent, one thing that we get a lot when we do our board meetings at each one of our universities, CU Boulder, CU Anschutz, Colorado Springs, or Denver, the school comes and they give us the regents a pretty amazing breakdown of whatever it is that they want to talk about, whether it's quantum, AI, or whatever it may be. One of the things that we have to address in this country is energy. Our current ways that we produce energy is archaic. And we are losing this on a worldwide level to China. One of the things that China has done well, and let's scare some Democrats in here, is nuclear energy. It's no longer about 3 Mile Island. It's about being able to meet the needs for a new generation of what it is that we need for our energy sources, including AI, because AI is not going anywhere. I'm sure that you all remember growing up in your house, you might have had just one plug in your bathroom. Can you imagine having one plug in your bathroom these days? I mean, you've got your toothbrush plugged in, you've got your phone plugged in, you've got all the things that are plugged in. We have got to look at energy different in this country. We have got to be bold in the ways that we look at it, and we have to look at clean energy, and we have to be able to move with those researchers, to be able to give them the opportunities to be able to figure out what America needs to stay competitive, because right now we are losing on a worldwide level. And it's not just in our inner cities, not just here in Denver, it's worldwide. So I would like to see Congress, when I'm there, absolutely explore the possibilities of going beyond where we are right now and not looking at what we have with different technologies and being fearful of it. We cannot keep our heads in the sand and expect that it's going to be okay.
It is time for our next question, and this one is on foreign policy. How should the United States approach its role in global security and international conflicts, such as those in Ukraine and the Middle East? And what is your position on current U.S. policies toward these conflicts? Melat Kirosh, who will answer first.
I think our foreign policy should be rooted in advancing diplomacy, in peace building, and creating relationships with allies that share our values. It is no surprise or question what my position is on the question of Israel and Palestine. I believe that a genocide is taking place, and I believe that it is our responsibility to call for an arms embargo to actually put an end to that violence. But I'm going to be honest, today is probably the hardest day that I've had in this campaign. I saw an article headline this morning that accused me of rationalizing the murder of Jews on October 7th, which couldn't be further from the truth. October 7th was a horrific war crime. And I personally have lost family in genocide in Ethiopia, in Tigray, where I immigrated from. My foreign policy has always been rooted in the belief that we are responsible for protecting the prosperity and the security and the right to self-determination for all of our neighbors around the world. And the fact of the matter is our tax dollars were funding a genocide that has been recognized by the United Nations, by the International Association of Genocide Scholars, and by 70% of Democratic voters. This is not a radical position. This is the overwhelming majority view. That does not preclude me from fighting for the right to security, peace, and self-determination for Jewish Israelis as well. That land has a uniquely Jewish, uniquely Muslim, and uniquely Christian character. And it is our responsibility to ensure that our relationship with Israel is one that protects that security and dignity for everyone in that region. That is why I am calling for an arms embargo, because I hope that our allies reflect the same values that we are fighting for here at home.
Wanda James, your answer to the question.
Regent James. So, I am the only person on this stage that has served our country in uniform. I come from a long line of military veterans. My father was an 30-year Air Force vet and a Vietnam vet. My mother was born in Liverpool, England. She was one of the children put on trains and sent out of the cities in England as Hitler decimated England. I did not know this until my mother was passing away and we were watching TV during when she was at hospice and they were showing the war in Ukraine. My mom started crying. I says, "What's wrong, Mom?" She says, "The baby's won." She goes, "They're never going to get over this." It was then that she told me when she came back to Liverpool, England, and my mother is a voracious reader, there's books all over our house, that my mother's formal education stopped at 11 years old. And she began working at that point in her life. War is horrific. Almost every vet I know is anti-war because we know what it means. We know what it looks like. Being anti-war does not mean it being anti-defense. What is happening right now in the world and what is happening with Trump as president, what happened in Venezuela was wrong. Mentioning Cuba was wrong. Talking about Greenland was wrong. What's happening in Iran is wrong. Wrong. This is why the War Powers Resolution has to come back to Congress, and this is why we need more veterans in Congress to be able to talk about this on a worldwide level so that we start to understand that this is about leaders and not about people. It is not about the Israelis or the Jewish people. It is about Netanyahu. It is about a war crime, and that's what we need to stay focused on. We also need to understand, too, that with the Straits of Hormuz and stopping oil, we also start to upset the balance of power with folks like China. When we allow Russia to do what Russia is doing to the Ukraine, it now allows China to do this to Taiwan. Taiwan is one of the most important countries to you because of what they do for technology. These are the things when we start talking about foreign policy, why we need people who understand the military and we understand what this is about.
Thank you,
because
Regent
we worn
James.
because we worn the uniform.
All right, it is time for another lightning round of questions. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's okay.
Moving right along. Diana DeGette, your answer to the question.
Thank
My
you so much.
apologies.
Thank you so much. One of the most devastating things about Donald Trump and his administration is the way that he has destroyed our reputation in the world as the leader for democracy. It's going to take generations to restore this, and we need to start now. First thing he did was threaten to take over Greenland. Remember that? And you know, we laugh, but it destabilized NATO. Now he's attacked Iran, and he's destroyed the equilibrium in the Middle East. With Ukraine, I have been fighting to give aid to Ukraine against the Russian incursion from day one, and he's abandoned Ukraine. In Gaza, we need to have immediate, massive humanitarian aid, and we need to work with our allies to rebuild and restore Gaza. I had my staff check today. There's $0 in Donald Trump's budget for humanitarian aid. And international organizations estimate it's going to cost $4 billion just for humanitarian aid. I think we should stop the war in Iran and use part of the money for Gaza. And by the way, I just saw the news coming over here tonight that Netanyahu has said Israel's going to keep 70% of Gaza. That is wrong, and I am here to condemn that right now, and I will do everything in Congress to fight to make sure that doesn't happen. Finally, just briefly, think about the USAID and World Health Organization cuts and the increase of malaria and Ebola. We have to work to restore those international organizations as soon as possible. There's a lot of work to be done, and we're all going to need to do it together. Thank you.
Now it is time for the lightning round. Thank you so much to our candidates for your answers to those questions. So again, you respond to these questions by raising your paddle. And again, that's support, oppose, or you can pass. Are we ready? Do you support or oppose fully funding ICE? Do you support or oppose federal student loan forgiveness? Do you support or oppose federal involvement in creating workforce training programs? Do you support or oppose stricter federal regulations for social media companies? Do you support or oppose stronger federal data privacy protections? Do you support or oppose accepting contributions or support from political action committees, PACs, organizations that raise and spend money to support or oppose candidates or policy positions? Okay. Do you support or oppose accepting contributions or support from PACs? Do you support or oppose taking money from PACs? I'm reading the question off the sheet, so I can't give any more clarification. You can oppose taking PAC money, or you can support, as in accept PAC money. Do you support accepting contributions or support from political action committees, or do you oppose that? Do we have clarity? Okay. Do you support or oppose stronger federal oversight of artificial intelligence? Do you support or oppose a federal ban on members of Congress trading individual stocks while in office? Do you support or oppose requiring broader bipartisan consensus for major federal reforms in areas like voting laws, taxes, and health care? Do you support or oppose requiring broader bipartisan consensus for major federal reforms in areas like voting laws, taxes, and health care?
It'd be nice.
I don't think, let me just say on behalf of all of us,
If they will allow you to speak on
we need to
behalf.
have those reforms. We all think we need to have those reforms, and we don't think we should require Republicans to vote with us if they don't, in order to have them, right? Yeah, that's what
Are the candidates in alignment on this? All right, I have to give equal time, so if everybody needed 10 seconds, I would grant it, but thank you. That concludes our lightning round. So we will return now to our main questions. Again, candidates, you will have 2 minutes to respond. This next one is about housing, and I will let you know there's a bit of a setup to it. So I will read as concisely as I can, but here we go, okay? According to data from the Denver Metro Association of Realtors and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, median home sale prices in the Denver metro area have increased by more than 60% over the past decade, substantially outpacing income growth for many residents and renters. What federal policies and programs would you prioritize to address housing affordability in Denver? Regent Wanda James, you may answer first.
National Housing Trust Fund, along with the low-income housing tax credit, which allows us to build more affordable homes. And building affordable homes does not mean, it means that people can actually afford those affordable homes. That's a key piece here as to what affordability actually means. I would also support house choice vouchers and rental assistance. People need to be able to get into their homes, potentially have the opportunity to rent to purchase their homes. This is so important. I would also look at pathways to home ownership for folks who give back to the communities. In other words, low interest loans for first responders, teachers, firemen, folks that are giving back, former military members would be great. Fourth, I would support having, converting all of this extra, because the malls are gone, people aren't going out anymore. We have so many extra buildings that could be converted into housing and low-income housing. It's vitally important that we take a look at what it is that we need to do here. I'm a big proponent of affordable housings in communities. I really love to see what they did in Lowry so that we've got apartments and condos and multi-million-dollar homes, because I think that people living together builds a stronger community. And then that way we don't end up creating, quote-unquote, areas of the city where people don't want to live. It's very important. Being able to give first-time homeowners their first opportunity to buy a home with fully funded FHA loans so that their mortgage is being guaranteed by the federal government. And then, of course, strengthening VA for everybody who serves in the military. Coming home to your own home should be a given what you have done for this country.
Representative Diana DeGette, it is your
you.
time to answer.
Thank you so much. Well, I think we can all agree how the cost of housing, combined with all of the other costs that I'll talk about in a minute, is a crisis in Denver. I know this because my own daughter, who's a young attorney, and her friends are struggling, even though they're professionals, to be able to pay for reasonable housing in this city. That has got to end. I'm a member of the Progressive Caucus in Congress, and our friend and colleague Maxine Waters from California she's going to be the chair of the Financial Services Committee in the next Congress. She's working with me and some of the other members to put together a comprehensive housing bill, and it's going to cover a number of things that we need to do. Down payment assistance for first-time home buyers, loan assistance for other home buyers. We are going to be looking at incentives for real estate development for middle class and lower middle class housing. And I can't fail to remind people that over the last 5 years, I've been able to get $60 million from the federal government for housing for the unhoused in Denver and related medical services, and also for the kids who need it the most. And I'm very proud of that, because we need housing for everybody in this community. And finally, we need to make sure that we have housing, child care, health care for working families. I'm proud to have been endorsed by the AFL-CIO, the firefighters, and many more unions, and I'm proud that I have a 100% AFL voting record, because working families really are the backbone of our community. We need to make sure they have good jobs with good pay and that they can afford to live here right in this community.
Maylot Quiros, your answer to the question.
So housing is a really important issue, and it's one that we actually don't need to reinvent the wheel. This isn't a question of what are the policies that are going to work. We can learn from our allies who have actually eradicated homelessness as we understand it in this country. And the answer is housing first. That is the only policy that is evidence-backed to not only eradicate homelessness, but ensure there is a permanent supply of affordable housing in every single city in this country. And I'm the only candidate that has been calling for housing first. I want to be clear about what that means, because there are some programs here in Denver that are calling themselves housing first, but they are not actually upholding the pillars that are required. And there are 3 pillars. The first is that you do not have any strings attached for housing that we give to anybody who is unable to provide it for themselves. The staircase model that we have been engaging in for decades now, where you are required to get a job, required to get clean, required to meet some kind of metric before you get supportive housing, does not work. You cannot rebuild your life without the foundation and security of knowing that you have a warm and secure bed to sleep on at night. The second is that we have to build more homes. We are looking at a deficit of about 5 million homes that we are going to need to build over the next few years. The only way that happens is with federal dollars and making sure that we are reforming our zoning laws, making sure we're reforming our permitting codes, making sure that we are investing massively our federal dollars into housing. And the third and final thing that was actually credited as the #1 thing that supported the Finland Housing First program is bringing in the current residents of neighborhoods where we are going to be building into the project. People in neighborhoods that have been opposing these developments are not doing so because they are afraid or hateful of the people that are coming in. It's because they're not a part of the process. You bring folks into the process, include them into the change. That is what has led to eradicating homelessness in Finland, and we're going to be able to do the same here in Denver.
Our next question deals with healthcare. Healthcare costs, including insurance premiums, prescription drugs, and out-of-pocket expenses, continue to rise for many Americans. What action should Congress take to address rising healthcare costs? Representative Diana DeGette.
Thank you so much. Well, as I've mentioned throughout this evening, healthcare costs are out of control in this country. Everybody who has to pay for an insurance policy or has to pay for Medicare knows this. Earlier, Ms. Quiros mentioned Obamacare and how that helped millions of people get the insurance they needed. I know about that because I was vice chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee and chief deputy whip at the time we passed Obamacare. And I was the one tasked with getting the public option through the House. And we did get the public option through the House. We were able to pass that. But then sadly, the other body, we don't like to refer to them unless we have to, they took it out. I believe if we had had the public option in that bill then, we would have a single payer system now, because everybody would have bought into that because it would be cheaper. So now what we need to do is we need to, when I'm the chair of this committee next time, I'm going to put the coalition together, including the members of my committee and others, to actually draft a path towards a single payer system and also draft a system where every drug, not just some drugs, gets negotiated by the federal government. Also, I passed a bill earlier this year, and I like to talk about it because in this country, it's a maternal mortality bill. In this country, Black women die at a much higher rate during childbirth than anybody else, irrespective of socioeconomic background or income. We need to stop that. I actually put a bill of mine into the appropriations bill, and it's law today, that we're going to find out the cause of this, and then we're going to resolve it. There's a lot of other things we need to do. I could go on and on.
Thank you,
when I
Representative
have this
DeGette.
gavel, I will be able to start these things happening.
Maylot Quiros.
Well, I have the pathway to passing Medicare for all. We have to vote out every single Congress member that is taking money from big pharma and big health insurance and big medicine that is preventing the legislation from actually getting through to Congress. The fact of the matter is Medicare for All is the most economic, most efficient, most effective program at achieving universal health care coverage in this country. That is a fact. If we allow this question of settling for a public option to get through, that is not going to be a pathway to Medicare for All. That's going to be a pathway for corporations to be able to weaken the public option, weaken the healthcare system so that they can continue to drive up those costs. Fact of the matter is we need to pass Medicare for All, we need to break up big medicine, and we need to cancel all medical debt. And I'll tell you why that is crucial. That is how we MAGA-proof our future in the 2032 presidential election. I have every faith that we're going to take back the House this cycle, even the Senate potentially. And we are definitely going to take back the White House in 2028. We have the opportunity at a trifecta. It's not a question of if we get that power. The question is what we do with that power. And when we have that opportunity again, we have to pass Medicare for All, cancel all medical debt, and break up big medicine to drive back competition in the healthcare industry. If we do that, then whatever sycophant fills the shoes of Donald Trump in the 2032 presidential election, who tries to lay blame on our most vulnerable communities for a rigged system, it will ring hollow to the voters. Because as a party, we can point to what we accomplished in achieving health care for all and say, this is what Democrats achieved for working people. This is how we delivered. The only way to do that is to vote out the Congress members that are in bed with the very interests who have no interest in passing Medicare for all. In fact, the National Nurses United Executive Director was quoted in calling out the Congresswoman's relationship with these big pharmaceutical companies and big health insurance companies. We cannot trust our Congress members to pass Medicare for all when they're in bed with the people who don't want it.
Thank you. Regent Wanda James.
I support Medicare for all, and we have to put an end to the insurance companies. It is ridiculous to me that you can book a plane flight, book a hotel in Toronto, spend a week in Canada, get medical services done in Canada, and still have it cheaper than going to your local doctor here in Denver, Colorado. Make that make sense. Why do I have friends who drive down to Mexico to be able to get their prescription drugs? Same drugs, exact same drugs, from the exact same companies, but ridiculously amount cheaper to our north and to our south. It's because we are in bed with insurance companies. And that is what needs to stop. That is the only way that we are going to pass Medicare for all. 450,000 black women lost their jobs with the federal government. Those women are never going back to maybe not all of them, but most of them are not going back to work again. They've all become small business owners. I believe in small business because I believe that small business is the backbone of America. It is vital to me that we able to pass Medicare for all because it allows small businesses then to compete with the larger firms to be able to bring in great people to be able to work for them. Nobody moves into a neighborhood because there's a great Target on the corner. You move into a neighborhood because there's a great small batch smokehouse. There's a great dispensary. There's a great small business on the corner. And that's what we want to be able to happen. This is an economic issue. As a Navy vet, I want to fully fund Veterans Affairs or veteran medical care. There is no reason why medical care and mental health is not something that is fully funded in this country. Mental health is not separate from health care. It should be fully covered, and it is a crisis on our college campuses. A crisis on our college campuses. Mental health, health care, Medicare for all, veteran health care must be fully funded if we are going to be a just people that we claim that we are. There is no way that we can get away from not fully funding health care.
And now we move to our final question of the night. All three of you at some point in this evening have talked about the Republican Party, but how would you work with members of the opposing party to advance the priorities of CD1? What specific work have you previously done that demonstrates your approach to bipartisanship? Maylot Quiros, we start with you.
I think the most effective pathway to bipartisanship is to work on the policy that has the broadest support among the American people, and that is corruption in government. 90% of Americans want to see money out of politics and Citizens United reversed. The fact of the matter is, though, talking about getting money out of politics has become a slogan, a tagline, just something that every single person who's running for office says that they want to do. But no one is actually providing actionable items to get it done. Corporations and special interests don't need to buy out every single member of Congress. They just need to buy out just enough people so that they are always there to prevent any kind of meaningful legislation from getting through. That is why our only pathway to getting money out of politics is using the last lever of power available to us, our vote. As a Democratic Party, if we have any hope of calling out the Republicans for the corruption that's engaging there, we have to clean up house on our side of the aisle. And what I'm asking for voters this cycle is for a new litmus test during the primaries. No more votes for any Democrat who takes corporate PAC money. You cannot work for the people while also taking money from the corporations and billionaires that got us into this mess in the first place. That is how we earn back the trust of the voters. That is how we can work across the aisle with Republicans whose voters are just as interested in getting rid of this mess. And so we've seen things like this already. Josh Hawley and Elizabeth Warren working on the Break Up Big Medicine Act. We've already seen Josh Hawley also coming in to talk about breaking up the credit card companies and calling for a cap on interest fees. The corruption is the thing that unites Americans. And if we want to win as a party again, because we have to, if we're going to save this party, we need to make anti-corruption our #1 issue. And we can't do that when we have to clean up our own side of the aisle.
Regent Wanda James.
For the last 2 decades here in Denver, I have worked on so many different policies with bipartisan appeal with Democrats that don't get along. Quite frankly, we passed Amendment 64. We stopped the arrest of people for simple possession of cannabis and once again leading to slave labor. That was a complicated policy decision that we had to work through mayors, legislators, governors, the people, universities. I have worked with it numerous times. As a University of Colorado regent, this is the first time that Democrats have had control of the board in 42 years. 42 years, Democrats have control of the board. One regent gave it back to the Republicans, but that's a whole other conversation. We have had to work together to make sure that we are doing the right things for the students and faculty and staff and the growth of our universities. Most importantly, as a military officer, I have commanded men and women from Republicans, atheists, all different forms of different disagreeable places. But what we have been able to do is when we are focused on moving things forward, when you focus a group of people on what is best for people, that becomes the focus, and we try to not get involved with the petty differences that we may have. Now, me saying that, we do not give up the things that are human to us. I will never compromise on racism. I will never compromise on misogyny. I will never compromise on hatred. Never. But before and long before we get to those points, there are so many things that we do that we can work together on to be able to move us forward as a people. And once again, I'm one of the people who has demonstrated that now for 2 decades and have done it effectively.
Representative Diana DeGette.
Thank you. Well, we got almost through the debate before the cheap political attack started. So I just have to assure all of you that I am never bought and I am never bought. And if anybody says that, they don't know my record. Furthermore, I never said we need the public option now. That was then, this is now. And what we need is Medicare for all. I'm one of the original co-sponsors of Medicare. And in addition, I think that negotiating for prescription drugs that we passed under the Inflation Reduction Act needs to be expanded to all drugs. And I told everybody that. Some people aren't too happy, but that's too bad because I want insulin to be affordable for my constituents. Let's talk now about the specific work that I've done to show bipartisanship. The first thing about that is you have to keep your core values. You can never compromise your core values as an elected official. But there are things that you can find bipartisanship on. I'll give you an example. Curing cancer. Cancer affects every family in this country. And that's why I worked with Congressman Fred Upton from Michigan on the 21st Century Cures Act, which restructured the way we do biomedical research at the NIH and drug and device approval at the FDA. It was the biggest bill that was passed in President Obama's last year as president and the last bill that he signed, and it gave the FDA the authorities for Operation Warp Speed to help us come up with the vaccine for COVID. That's the kind of work we need to do in a bipartisan way, but never compromising our values or ideals.
We will end tonight's forum with closing remarks from each candidate. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to share, once again, why they are seeking to represent Congressional District 1. We will go in reverse ballot order, so we will begin with Regent Wanda James.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here tonight. This was enjoyable. I want to close tonight with something really simple. My opponents can tell you what it is that they believe. I can show you what I have done. When we use the phrase lived experience often in politics, for me, lived experience is not a slogan. It is not a talking point, because it is the life that I have lived. It's the fights that I have taken on. It's the doors I have forced open for the people who are coming behind me. This is what I bring to this race. Not a version of courage, but proven courage. Not a promise that I might lead when the moment becomes difficult, but a lifetime of leaving when the moment was difficult. And make no mistake, this is one of those difficult moments. Families in Denver cannot afford housing, people cannot afford health care or mental health treatment that they need before their life reaches a crisis. Children in our inner city neighborhoods are breathing polluted air, facing dangerous heat. Immigrant families are living in fear. Women's rights are under attack. LGBTQ rights are under attack. Voting rights are under attack. Public education is under attack. Social Security and Medicare are under attack, and the rule of law is being challenged. I am asking for your vote because I am the one person sitting on this stage that is prepared for this moment. I am not a quiet leader. I am not somebody who confesses caution with courage or silence, who confuses caution with courage or silence with strategy. I fight for what is right, even when there is a personal cost to me. I have been tested. I have taken the attacks. I have never stopped standing up for the people and for the communities who deserve a voice. If Democrats are going to save America, we better send people to Washington who are not afraid to act like America is worth saving. The days of believing strongly worded letters will meet this moment are over. This is not time to send someone to Washington to train on the nuances of leadership. This is a time to send somebody who has already led, someone who has already fought, someone who's already broken barriers, and has already changed the status quo. I am not asking you to imagine who I might become when I go to Congress. I am asking you to look at who I have been my entire life. I am Wanda James. Service is my life. Courage is my record. And this moment in America is why I am running. When I show up, things get changed. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, League of Women Voters. Thank you, Mika. I really appreciate it.
Representative Diana DeGette.
Thanks so much to our sponsors and to our wonderful moderator for this really spirited and informative forum tonight. I thought I would spend just a few minutes talking to you about what motivates me to do this job. I grew up right here in Denver, the oldest of 5 kids, raised mostly by a single mother who was a kindergarten teacher. And when I was a young girl, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer and fight for justice. It was my immigrant grandfather who had an 8th grade education who encouraged me to become a lawyer, even though we had no lawyers in the family. I went to South High School like my mom and my sisters, and then I went to college with student aid, with lots of jobs, and I was lucky to be accepted to New York University Law School on a public interest scholarship. The day after law school, unlike most of my friends who went and worked at Wall Street law firms, I flew back to Denver and became a public defender. And later, I became a civil rights lawyer. At some point, I realized I could serve my community even more, and I ran for the legislature, where I passed a bill to give clinic access to abortion patients. I passed a bill to clean up environmental contamination that's been used for thousands of sites in Colorado. So when Pat Schroeder retired, I decided I could bring this sense of justice to the federal level. That fight of that young girl has never been more relevant than today on all of our philosophies. But question number one, way back earlier in this forum said, what specific actions will you take to advance your priorities? With every answer, I've told you exactly what I have done and what I will do. I have never left this fight, and I never will lose this fight. As the chair of the Powerful Health Subcommittee, I will put together the votes for Medicare for All. And as the co-chair of the Reproductive Freedom Caucus, I will have legislation on the floor the first week of the new Congress to give abortion rights to all Americans like we have here in Colorado. It's not just seniority, it's leadership and it's commitment. There's a reason why Congressman John Lewis was my close friend and mentor, because he cared about justice too, and he cared about the fight. Every day, I live by the principle he taught me. Never give up and never give in. And I think about that every day when I go to work. I ask for your support tonight. I ask for your support on June 30th. And I ask for your support in November as we work to restore our democracy.
Thank you, Representative
Thank
Daggett.
you.
Maylot Quiros.
Well, thank you all so much for being here tonight. I can't speak for the others, but I actually had a lot of fun. And thank you so much for the moderator. And I want to be clear about why I'm running, right? We do all largely agree on the policies that we want to fight for, the world that we want our kids to be able to live in the future. But the difference is what problem we've diagnosed and how we actually think that problem needs to be addressed. I'm the only candidate that is talking about money and politics with the urgency that it deserves. And I want to address, the accusation of a cheap political attack, and I want to say directly to you, Congresswoman, what I've been saying in forums this entire campaign, that I'm grateful for your service. I'm grateful for your work on reproductive justice. I am grateful, I am. My issue with the money and politics issue is not about the character. I know that members of Congress, just like the Congresswoman, are going to work and are trying their absolute best to get the right things done. The fact of the matter is, the money is too powerful. And if you don't understand the psychology of money, the insidious nature with which it works, to the point where sometimes you don't even realize how it is influencing you, then you cannot truly be fighting for the interests of working people. To say that our representatives should not be taking corporate PAC money is not to suggest that they are not also fighting for working families. It is to make clear that the only way for us to be fighting as forcefully and fiercely as we need to, with the little time that we have left, AI is developing rapidly. Climate change is happening quickly, and we are not prepared for how those changes are going to influence our economy, our democracy, and our planet. When I'm calling for money to get out of politics, when I'm calling for our representatives to stop taking corporate PAC money, that is not an attack on their character. It is not an attack on any person's character. We deserve a democracy that fights for us. And that is why I'm the only candidate that is calling to take out that money. I'm the only candidate that is not taking corporate PAC money. And for those who believe that you can't win without it, I am the candidate that is raising the most money from individual people, because that is how it is supposed to be done. 500 volunteers are behind this campaign. We are bringing in young people and disaffected voters in ways we have not seen for years in this city. And that is because of the policies that we are fighting for, and we are calling out the true problem in government right now. That is not an attack on anybody. That is a fight for what I want our government to look like. And I'm grateful for everyone being here for your time. I'm grateful for our moderator and the wonderful questions. And I'm honored and excited to continue these next few days as we head off to this race.
And that concludes our closing remarks. Thank you, candidates. Please join me, audience, in thanking our candidates for their time, their candor, their willingness to stand before you tonight. All right. Again, I'm Micah Smith. I'm with Denver 7, and I want to thank you for showing me grace as your moderator tonight as well. Oh, thank you. We hope we have given you a fair look at each candidate vying to represent those of you in Congressional District 1. Remember, the state primary election is on Tuesday, June 30th. Be sure your registration is up to date and make your voice heard by voting. We also want to extend our sincere thanks to El Seminario for being our media partner, and to Montview Boulevard Presbyterian Church for having us here tonight. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Colorado and the League of Women Voters of Denver, thank you so much for coming, and have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.